I have been keeping a store in Perros Crossing for going on 31 years, and in that time, I have watched a fair number of things happen on the street outside my window. Most of them don't amount to much, but every so often a small thing happens that you file away without knowing why, because some part of you understands it isn't finished yet. The first time I saw Remy So, it was a Tuesday in November, cold enough to see your breath at noon. He came in off the Laramie Road riding a gray horse that had seen better months, and he wore a canvas duster that had been split along the left shoulder seam, split clean, not torn, like a branch had caught it at speed. He tied up at the post outside Lena Pratt's seamstress shop, not mine, and went in without knocking. I watched from behind my bolts of muslin, because there was nothing else pressing, and because a man with a coat like that, riding alone in November, is worth at least a look. Lena Pratt had been running that shop for 4 years by then. Her husband, Tomas, had died of a fever 2 winters before and left her a singer machine, a bolt of good wool, and a ledger with more red in it than black. She had a boy, Gil, who was 9 years old and already old enough to stack shelves and keep his mouth shut when his mother was working. She took in mending, alterations, winter coats for the ranchers' wives, saddle blanket stitching for whoever needed it. She did not complain. She did not ask for anything. In 4 years, I never once saw her come across to my store and buy anything she did not strictly need. Remy So was in her shop for about 40 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. When he came out, he had his coat on, and the shoulder seam was closed up neat as a book, and he was carrying a tin bowl that he set carefully on her porch rail before he walked to his horse. I found out later that she'd given him soup, venison, from a haunch Gil had helped dress the week before. She'd fed him at the back work table while the coat was drying over the stove grate, and she'd refused the $1.50 he'd put on the table. I know she refused it because I asked her about it the next morning when she came in for thread. He offered fair, I said. He offered more than fair, she said. The coat took me 20 minutes, and the soup was left from supper. I wasn't about to charge a man for soup. You could use $1.50, I said, because it was true, and because we had known each other long enough for plain talk. I could use a lot of things, Cleet, she said. Thread. Number 8, if you have it. And that was the end of the conversation. I watched Remy So ride out the north end of Perros Crossing that morning, and I did not expect to see him again. Men like that, steady in the saddle, no particular destination in their eyes, tend to keep moving. Something about the way he'd handled that tin bowl, setting it down careful on the rail instead of leaving it inside, told me he was a man with a code that maybe didn't have much use for him anymore. The kind of man who learns to be exacting about small things because the large things have gone wrong. I thought about him once or twice over the winter. Mostly, I thought about Lena. The shop had a hard spring. A fire took the tannery at the south end of town in February, and 3 families that had accounted for most of her winter mending work packed up and moved to Cheyenne. The wool rancher's wife, who'd ordered 6 yards of curtain cloth, canceled the order in March without explanation. By April, Lena was open 6 days a week, and some weeks the total she brought in wouldn't cover her lamp oil. I knew this not because she told me, but because I could see her light burning later and later into the evenings. And because Gil started coming over to sweep my storeroom on Saturdays for 20 cents, and he was too young to be doing it for any reason, but that his mother needed the 20 cents. I didn't say anything about it to her. She wouldn't have wanted me to. But I thought about what I might do when things got bad enough that something had to be done, and I hadn't landed on anything good. Then, on the second Thursday, in May, Remy So rode back into Perros Crossing. I saw him before he tied up. Same gray horse, looking somewhat better than it had in November. Fed and rested and with new shoes. Remy himself looked the same. Canvas duster. Hat pushed back an inch. Jaw that hadn't seen a razor in 4 or 5 days. He tied up not at Lena's post this time, but at mine. Came in and bought a tin of tobacco and a box of cartridges and a small bag of salt, which told me he was planning to be somewhere for a while. He didn't say much. Men like Remy So generally don't. But when he'd paid and was turning to go, he stopped with his hand on the doorframe and looked across at Lena's shop. The seamstress, he said. She's still there? She's still there, I said. He nodded and went out. I will tell you what I saw over the next 10 days, because I was at my window for most of it, and because a storekeeper who isn't paying attention to his town isn't much good to anyone. The first afternoon, Remy went across and talked to Lena for about 20 minutes. I don't know what was said. She came to the door when he left and watched him walk back toward the livery, and her face had the expression it gets when she's working something through, not upset, just thinking. The next morning, a writer I didn't know came in from the east with a draft paper from the Perros Crossing land office. By noon, it was settled that the note Tomas Pratt had taken against the shop property. A note that Lena had been paying down at $8 a month for 4 years was cleared, paid in full. I found this out from the land office clerk who told me because he couldn't help himself, and I stood very still behind my counter for a moment after he'd gone. On Friday, lumber arrived. 4 men with 2 wagons and the tools to use them. They spent a day and a half repairing the back wall of Lena's shop, where the winter had worked the chinking loose, and they replaced the 2 porch boards that had gone soft, and one of them climbed up and reset 3 shingles on the roof that had been lifting in the south wind since September. I know about the shingles because I'd been meaning to mention them to her for 2 months and hadn't found the right moment. Saturday morning, Remy So came back across the street and went into the shop, and this time he was in there for 2 hours. When he came out, he was alone. He stood on the newly repaired porch for a moment in the May morning, and then he came across to me. "Got a good view of things from here," he said. "I try not to use it badly," I said. He almost smiled. "Not quite. She told me you'd been good to her," he said. "To both of them. The boy comes and sweeps for you." "Gil's a good worker," I said. He was quiet for a moment. He looked at his hands, which were a surveyor's hands. Careful and calloused and used to measuring things exactly. "I've been riding since my wife died," he said. 2 years and some months. I had a spread in the Powder River country that I sold off because I couldn't see the point of it. I've been looking for a point. And?" I said. "A woman gave me a bowl of soup in November," he said, "and fixed my coat, and wouldn't take $1.50 for it." He looked across at the shop, where I could see Lena's shape moving past the window. That kind of thing stays with you. You start thinking about what it means that a woman in a hard year feeds a stranger from her own pot and won't hear of payment. "What does it mean?" I said, though I thought I knew. "It means she's a person worth knowing," he said, "and that there aren't so many of those that a man ought to ride past twice." He tipped his hat to me and went back across the street. I locked my front door at 4 o'clock that afternoon, which I have not done on a Saturday in 11 years. There are some things a man doesn't need to watch. What I can tell you is what I know from Gil, who is now old enough to tell it straight. He said his mother was in the back of the shop, sorting notions when Remy came in the second time, and that she knew without turning around who it was by the sound of his boots on the new boards. He said Remy stood for a moment and then told her plainly that he had no gift for speeches, and that she should stop him if he was about to make a fool of himself, but that he had been thinking about Perros Crossing since November and would like to stop thinking about it from a distance if she allow it. He said his mother set down what she was holding and turned around and looked at Remy So for a long moment without speaking. Then she said she had a boy and a shop and a singer machine and a mended coat that rode out without a word in November, and that she was not in the practice of being surprised twice by the same man. And Remy said, "No, ma'am, you won't be." Gil said he slipped out the back at that point, which showed sense for a 9-year-old. I'll tell you the rest of it quick because the details are their own business. Remy So put his name on the deed alongside Lena's in June. He had the sense not to try to run her shop for her, and the good judgment to take up survey work again out of Cheyenne, which meant he had honest work, and she had a partner rather than a wait. By the following spring, they had a milk cow and a sound roof, and a boy who was calling the man by his first name and meaning something by it. The gray horse lives in Lena's backlot now. Gil brings it water every morning before school. Remy told me once, in the particular way he has of saying the important things sideways, that he'd been a man who measured distances for a living and had somehow managed to ride 2,000 miles past the place he was supposed to stop. I thought that was about right. A bowl of soup and a mended seam. A woman who gave because it was the decent thing and asked nothing back. A man with a code who found that the code still had some use after all, if he pointed it in the right direction. Some debts don't need collecting. They come home on their own in their own time, on a gray horse in May. All you have to do is leave the door open. I should know. I was watching.